All right, well, welcome back, everybody. Good morning. Thanks for being here with us today. My name is Angela Ratty. I'm the Client Services Architect at FICNAT CSIS. I'm going to be covering some of the changes you're going to see in the upcoming months in CALPADS. Our first two slides are just reference slides for you. You've probably seen this one already. Everything on the left-hand screen of the screen is in the past. So we're focusing going forward, April through the end of the school year. Cohort processing starts next week, and end of year submission starts May 10th. You can start submitting end of year data now, but you just won't see any snapshots until the May 10th timeframe. And then this next slide is same dates, just listed out a little bit differently. What of note is that your initial deadline for end of year is July 30th, and the LEAs that don't approve by that date do get a letter to your superintendent. So that's a good date to have in your calendar, and make sure you're approved by that date. Okay, so I want to preface this with saying that this is not a substitute for training. We're going to be real high level, giving you a real broad stroke overview of some of the changes you're going to see. The trainers go into great detail in their trainings, and so I highly recommend you go to those. We'll start at the end of year training and cohort training in May. Okay, so we're going to be talking about end of year. So we have the new work-based learning file. We have some Career Tech Ed updates. In end of year 3, we moved some reports from Vol 1 over to EOY 3. And then, sorry, that under EOY 4, we should have spelled that out for you. PSTS is the post-secondary status file. Just a reminder of what's in it. Brandi's going to spend some time going over some tips for avoiding common end of year 4 certification errors. She's got great insight, and so she'll be able to help you kind of prepare in advance so you're not caught off guard. And then I have a few other EOY reminders for you. Work-based learning file, potentially used on the CCI indicator on the dashboard for fall 2022. We're going to be analyzing the data for internships, student-led enterprise, virtual simulated work-based learning. And this file does come from the student information system, but you will be working with your SPED and CTE coordinators on populating the data for it. There are 2 new reports I'm going to show you. And Flash 184 has a lot of references in it.
So Angela, can I say a little bit more about this?
Sure.
You know, we've talked about this file previously in other areas like the Flash, and I think we even did a training back in November to help people data population. So it's just a reminder here that that is a brand new file. However, some of those fields we were collecting in the SENR file the previous year.
Right, and the SPED.
And the SPED. And so now we've put it into one file, and it's called the work base. So all along, people should have been collecting this data, because it doesn't just happen at the end of the year, that somewhere you've been storing this data. And now the vendors, the SIS vendors, have built this work-based learning extract file, and it's this additional file that you will need to report in end of year 1.
Thanks, Martha. I was going to talk about the data population. If you go to the CSIS CALPADS training channel in YouTube, and you do a search for work-based, there's the data population intro and overview that you can watch if you miss that live training. So if you're an LEA admin, I need you to be paying attention right now. If I had a camera on this my computer, I'd turn it on so you can see me jumping up and down and waving at you. So something you can do today, before you can upload or view any data regarding the new work-based learning file, you need to, as an LEA admin, assign yourself the new roles. They don't automatically get assigned to your account, and then you'll go in and assign those roles to anybody that you want to have access to either upload, view, or download extracts. So I'm going to do that. I'm logged in as Placer Union High LEA admin. I'm going to go to my own account and edit that, and you'll see 3 new roles pop up.
So Angela, the roles are available now, but they can't upload the file until when? believe we activate it May 10th.
May 10th, yeah, so that's what I was thinking. But yeah, but that, just so you don't get caught off guard, because you'll forget if you don't do it today. So here are the three roles that you're going to want to assign to your own account. And then again, you'll come in and do this for any of your users that you support that are going to need these roles. So just move them on over to your assigned roles box, save and close. So you can do that today after this call. I'm going to switch to my state account because I had one of the testers upload some test data for us that we could look at. So there we see that new file. If I hadn't just assigned my roles, those roles to myself, I wouldn't see this as an option as a file type. Okay, so here's some work-based learning files that were uploaded. It's going to work just like every other single file you upload to CALPAD. So comes from the SIS. One thing is it does not auto-post like the other files that come from your SPED systems. So you can look at the error report. If you don't know what the error is, we added this feature a while back where any error in CALPADS is going to have a hyperlink to open up what the error is and if there's any defects associated to it, how to resolve it. So basically the error list in a different format. And so rather than having to go find that error list, look it up, you could just hop right to it. And then there's also a brand new modal for these records. Show you that. This is a test student, so don't worry about any PII. So it's down at the very bottom, work-based learning, and you can add, edit, and delete this record in online maintenance. You know, we always encourage you to do it everything through batch, but if needed to, you can edit and delete this record. I'm not in the production environment. I'm in one of our testing environments, and it was giving me a little grief this morning, so hopefully it's cooperative. Okay, pretty straightforward. These are all the data elements that are collected.
Angela, we are getting people asking us what grade levels is this file collection
High school.
for? Grades 9 through 12.
Yep. It's reporting their high school's preparedness for CCI indicators. Okay, so Perkins was reauthorized and there were some changes, some significant changes. The concentrators got decommissioned as a term that's being used, and there's now CTE participants. And the student career tech ed record is now only required or only reported for students who are completers. If you try to report a participant in that record, it's going to reject because the academic year ID that the year was completed is supposed to be populated. So that's a new validation on that record. Rather than go through all of these, I'm just going to show you. And I have to say, not all of the changes that I'm going to be talking through have been implemented in this environment just yet. So you can reference the slide before, but you can see that reports 317 and 318 are gone. Those were the non-concentrator reports. 3.14 we're keeping, but the name of it is going to change to CTE participants. So that hasn't been updated in this environment yet. And then there's a new report, 3.19. That is the Career Technical Education Completers Count by Pathway. So that is the certification report that you're going to have to review. And then there's also a county authorizing version of this, and I don't think that's available yet, but if you have independent charters under your LEA or your county office, that report 3.19 will be available under the county authorizing reports. It's an aggregate. And then we're also reactivating 3.14 for the county authorizer reports. I don't think that's there yet either. Let's go check. Okay, so 319 is there now, but there'll be one more. 3.14 is coming back for there as well. And then under the user manual, if you go to the functionality map and reports, snapshot reports, EOY report mapping guides, those we've added the new ones and taken away the old reports. So if you need help understanding what the new reports are. Oh, did I forget to show you that for the new 18.1 as well? This is back for the work-based learning. There it is. So there's a new aggregate report for work-based learning counts, and then there's the detail that go along with it.
So that is an extra report in EOY1 to certify. And if you don't have any students that participated in work-based learning, the report will just say 0?
Yes, that'll be all zeros, but you should still certify it. Okay, moving on to end of year 3. We're completing our evolution of migrating the grad and completer reports from fall 1 to end of year so that we're more in line with accountability reporting. And same for the redesignated fluent English proficient reports. The 2.16 and 2.17 are also going to be no longer part of fall 1. They are reports you're going to certify in end of year 3.
End of 3 is getting bigger. But the data should be there already, so that's the easy part.
Yeah, and you're familiar with these reports already, right? They're not brand new, so it's just in a different submission.
I think part of this is your planning as well, because the people that need to look at these reports, you need to catch them before they're gone for the summer so that you can meet that July 30th deadline. So, you know, figure out who should be looking at your RFEP counts and figure out who should be verifying grad counts and make sure they check the results before they head off so you can get certified on time.
Yeah, and here are the 2 reports that are now required to be certified, and then they also have their corresponding student lists that go with them. So completers list and RFEP list. And again, there are mapping guides for those. Oops.
EOY 3.
Oh, thank you. There they are. There. So 1.22 and 2.16, and then their corresponding reports as well. Okay, so this is just a reminder. You did this last year for end of year 4. I just wanted to call it out because it's kind of a crossover file. You just reported your post-secondary status in fall 2 for your CTE completers. This is a different group of kids for end of year 4 that you're going to be certifying. These are students who exited last year in 1920 and were students with disabilities. So about right around now-ish, you're going to start surveying those kids and report that data. That data is used for the state performance plan indicator post-school outcomes. We added 3 new fields to that file for this year, but it's not used for end of year. We only use those for fall 2. And this submission, that file comes from your special ed system. And because it was designed to come from either special ed system or your SIS, that file does auto posts regardless of where you send it from. Just a heads up, because I know it catches people off guard. Flash 203 has a lot of detail on that just came out 2 weeks ago, I think. And it also has the link to the survey. You could always go to Communications, Flash, here it is, Flash 203. And it's part of this if you were to download it. Here's the survey, and you can download this as a Word document as well.
And this is a survey that folks with special ed have been doing for some time now. So this is not a brand new survey, but it's now mapped to the way we're collecting the data.
And then the other thing I wanted to show you that there are 4 new post-secondary status codes. So if you wanted to find that, you could go to the code set document. And filter on post-secondary. And then filter on the start date. So there are the 4 new codes that are collected in that file. Okay, so Brandi, are you ready to talk about some of your tips that you are suggesting for end of year 4?
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to drive for you.
Okay, so these specific tips are obviously for all of our SPED data coordinators. So if you are a SELPA or a SPED data coordinator, now is the time to kind of pay attention. And what I want to talk about is tips to avoiding some of the common certification errors. So first of all, I will tell you that many of you have been asking for a really long time. And it's been, you guys on the SPED side have been very vocal, and we understand why, about why it is that you can't actually see certification errors until the submission window opens in May. And we realize that that is a pain point. And so we are working for next year to try and develop some reports that basically would function much like your monitoring report, 16.8, 16.7 and 16.8, in helping you identify when these errors are occurring at any point in time during the year so that you can correct them before the certification window opens. But what I want to do now, because that hasn't been implemented yet, I want to give you some tips on how to avoid some of these certification errors, because the first time you'll start seeing them is on May 10th, when our snapshots start running. So the first thing is make sure that you're creating a SPED transaction anytime a student is an incoming transfer and they are on an active IEP. Remember that the plan that student is on, if they were an active student with an active IEP, that plan isn't stay put until either you make an amendment to that plan or a new meeting is held by the new LEA. So if you make that adoption of the prior district's plan and the student's plan when they enter your district, you can help avoid CERT132. Okay, CERT132 is going to be a warning for end of year 4, but I will tell you, if you do not take care of that warning, it's going to come back to bite you in fall. So make sure that you are adopting transactions from another LEA when that student is on an active IEP, because that represents an acknowledgement that you know that that student is on an IEP that's in stay put mode until you either hold an amendment or hold another meeting. It will also help you avoid CERT144, which is a SPED record missing for student enrolled at an NPS school. So anytime they transfer to an NPS, make sure that you adopt the record, particularly if it's a new LEA, you need to adopt the student's plan from the prior LEA. And then finally, CERT145, which is SPED record missing for student enrolled in a private school. Remember, if a student transfers to a private school and is being put on an individualized service plan, it's really important that a plan be adopted for that student at the district level. And we do have a specific FAQ on how to handle transfers to private schools. So make sure you check out our frequently asked questions page. It gives you step-by-step details on students that are transferring to and from private schools. The other thing that I wanted to mention was that you need to make sure that you use the SSID Extract to identify students with disabilities as soon as they enroll in your LEA. So our CALPADS administrators and the folks that work in your SIS are often the individuals that are obtaining those SSIDs on a regular basis. As part of obtaining those SSIDs and enrolling students in your LEA, obtaining those SSIDs, there's a column in that extract that indicates when a student is a student with disabilities. And so if there is a yes in that SSID extract column, you need to provide that information to your special education data coordinator so that they can create a transaction in the special education data system.
I'm going to be demoing that as well, Brandi.
Oh, right on. Okay. Tip number 2, when a student is in kindergarten and they turn 5 years old, make sure that you are creating an amendment transaction to populate required data for school-age students. So the U.S. Department of Education put out specific guidance for students who are in kindergarten and age 5. They have to be in a school-age setting. So there are 2 fields specifically that we're looking for data in for those students. Number 1, the general education participation range code has to be populated. And secondly, the special education setting code with a school age setting, meaning anything except code 201, which is early childhood. Because remember, we don't expect kindergartners who are at least age 5 to be in early childhood settings. It has to be a school age setting. If you make sure of those things, and we understand that your special education vendors have implemented some reports and give you warnings when this is happening, or when students are getting ready to turn age 5, and you may need to make these amendments to their general education participation range and special education program. That's going to help you avoid CERT 167 and 168. So CERT 167 and 168 will be warnings for end of year 4. But again, do not ignore these warnings because they will come back to haunt you in fall 1 of 21-22. Okay, so we're trying to be proactive, and we did an analysis of some of the data and then the transactions that are currently in CALPADS. And what we found was there are about 700 plus LEAs representing about 4,974 kindergarten students who have turned 5 this academic year, who based on the data that we see in the system now will generate one of those errors, CERT 167 or CERT 168. And that's because their general education participation range code is blank, or you've got a special education program setting code of early childhood. Okay, so we have communicated to your vendors. We've given them the information, even the specific SSIDs that are being affected. So your vendors should be communicating with you, telling you that you need to update the transactions for these students by creating amendments that will modify these settings so that you don't generate CERT 67 and 168. So we're giving you the heads up. Make sure that you look for these things in your system prior to May 10th, and then you won't have to deal with these certification errors. All right, the next common tip is that every SPED record that has a unique meeting or amendment identifier, it needs a corresponding services record with the same meeting amendment identifier from the same reporting LEA. The CERT 142 error is generated if you're missing an SSRV record. Okay, this generally happens when a triennial and an annual are held on the same day. And sometimes you will send services associated with the annual record, but not the triennial, or vice versa. So just remember, every unique amendment or meeting identifier has to have a corresponding service record with that same meeting or amendment identifier. That is why you will generate CERT 142. So just make sure that you're submitting services with every meeting type, even if the meeting was held on the same day. Next one is when a student ages out of special education, you need to make sure that their student enrollment record is exited with an exit code that indicates they will not be returning. We should not see E155 exits for students who have aged out of special education because they are no longer eligible for IDEA. So if you will look here, we put really, we put the education code for when it's appropriate to exit students from special education when they age out, okay? If a student's 22nd birthday is between January and June, the student can continue through the remainder of the fiscal year. They don't age out until the end of the fiscal year. If the student's 22nd birthday is in July, August, or September of a new fiscal year, the student will not be allowed to start attending school. I got some service tickets last year about students whose birthdays were in those months and the LEA had enrolled them. And they should not have enrolled them because they're not eligible for services in the new fiscal year. And then lastly, if the student's 22nd birthday is during October, November, or December, the student shall be terminated from the program on December 31st. Okay, so here are some really clear-cut dates for you to use in terms of students aging out of special education, and they are in statute, they're in ed code. So these are things we've also provided to your special education vendors, and they're going to try and assist you in getting some of these rules implemented in your special ed systems as well. So as long as you are exiting students that are aging out of special education, you're also exiting their enrollment, you're going to avoid CERT 141. So what I would do is go back into my system, take a look at any student who aged out of special education, work with the CALPADS administrator to ensure their enrollment record reflects the fact that they will not be returning. They have to have an exit code that indicates they will not be returning. So reminders for exiting students with disabilities from special education. Reminder, you need to make sure that when you're populating a special education program exit date, meaning they're no longer eligible for services. If you're populating that date, make sure you populate it on the annual or initial record. Populating this on the exit record, or excuse me, the triennial record, if you've already got transactions in there and that student's program exit shows up on the triennial record, but not any of the most recent annual or initial, that student is going to look like they are still eligible for special education and will show up in report 16.1 and 16.2 like that. So just remember, look at students who have exited the program, particularly within the last year, and make sure that that exit date is represented on the student's most recent annual. That way they don't show up as active in 16 and 16.1 and 16.2, particularly if they exited in the prior academic year. Make sure also, as part of the end of year 4 activities, you are verifying the District of Special Education Accountability Extract. It's the DSEA Extract. The purpose of this particular extract was to be able to show districts when they were being identified as the District of Special Education Accountability. And the reason that's important is because the Accountability Office and the Special Education Division made a decision over a year ago that the District of Special Education Accountability will be held accountable in the district level indicators on the dashboard for students with disabilities. Okay, but oftentimes the LEA that is submitting that District of Special Education Accountability is the district where the student is actually going to school. And so another district could possibly inappropriately identify your district as the District of Special Education Accountability. So you need to review that District of Special Education Accountability extract, and you need to verify that if you are receiving accountability from any other district, you need to make sure and check with your CELPA as well as your SPED data coordinator. Make sure that that is the correct District of Special Education Accountability that's being identified for that particular student. If it's not, you need to contact that district and have them correct it. Okay. Also, if you are sending accountability to another district, you should verify that that in fact is the correct district to which accountability needs to be sent. Just some general analysis of these data initially indicate that sometimes there's not a really good understanding of what the District of Special Education Accountability or who the District of Special Education Accountability is. So the CALPADS Help User Manual has a great page that will show you exactly what the District of Special Education Accountability means, and how to use that particular extract. Okay, and I think I went over this already. So if you're not the appropriate LEA, if you're receiving accountability, you need to contact the other district. And if you are inappropriately sending accountability to another district, you need to make sure that you correct it on your SPED record for that student, so that other district does not inappropriately get accountability for that student in the dashboard.
So Brandi, something may have been miscommunicated, because we got quite a few questions about the service record on triennials. So I think the group heard that they need to provide a service record for a triennial, and we only want a service record for an annual record. Correct?
I had not, unless that's changed.
We used to have a validation rule. Okay.
So you know what? Maybe Corey, I see your question. Let me get that clarified. I do know that at a certain point we were expecting services to be attached to triennials as well. But I may have misspoke. So I will.
If you give me a moment, as Angela continues on, I will find the validation CERT error that confirms.
Sorry, I didn't mean to freak everybody out.
I'm with you, Brandi. I thought we required it.
Yeah,
services for a triennial.
Right, and folks, you know what maybe I didn't communicate appropriately is this something probably your vendors do behind the scenes. It's not something that you specifically do during a triennial meeting. Right. But I believe that we do require, if the meeting, well, any meeting type for that matter, with the exception of pending, requires services. Yeah. So if you've got one of those plans, so if you've got an IEP, an IFSP, or an ISP, the services have to be attached, but it's not something you special education data coordinators or SELPAs do specifically in a triennial. I believe your vendors are doing that behind the scenes.
Okay, so real quick, just a couple other end of year reminders. CERT 97, every single year, we have somebody that waits until like the day before the final deadline to say, what's this? How do I fix it? So when you're reporting your Title I targeted or school-wide assistance, you have to do that through the Consolidated Application Reporting System, CARS. I believe, Brandi, the deadline's June 30th for that.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, but anyway, if you report as targeted assistance, but you don't give us any programs for that Title I, we are going to trigger the CERT 97. And usually what happens is, oh, we're school-wide, so we just were certified wrong in CARS. And so work with your CARS person and make sure that that data is reported accurately well before the deadline, because then otherwise you're going to be in panic mode. And then direct CERT and former foster tables get dropped out of CALPADS on July 1, and there's no way to recover them. So if you want that data, put a reminder in your calendar to grab that stuff before July 1, sometime in late June after the direct CERT run is in the first part of the month. And then you guys are used to seeing this one. This is our suggested milestones. These aren't, hard deadlines for each one, but they're just, to keep yourself on track. These are what we recommend you hit these dates. Okay, and a couple more changes, and I wanted to go through with you. These next two slides are not new. You've seen these before, so just going over what the adjusted cohort graduation rate is and how it's used on the dashboard. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because that's not new. And same with this slide. You've seen this before. It's just updated with the dates for this year. So on Monday next week. We'll start Sunday night. We're going to run cohort as an overnight process, and so we'll kick it off Sunday night. Monday morning, you can come in and you'll start being able to work on your cohort report. Although you probably have not exited your 12th graders just yet. It ends on August 27th. One catch I want to point out with that is that if the end of year deadline it's the same date, right, August 27th, but if that somehow gets pushed out for whatever reason, like with fall 2, we had some performance problems, and so we had to bump the date out. If that happens again for end of year, that cohort date gets adjusted along with it. So the point is that those two dates should be in alignment. And then the date range is July 1, 2017 to August 15, 2021. And that's how we determine who is in your cohort. Now, for the really exciting stuff, we are really I am at least super excited about what we're doing with cohort. So the existing functionality is still there, nothing's changed, but we're also running 3 future years. So here, let me show you. So they're in the same spot under reports, accountability, monitoring reports. So 2 things that are really going to be cool for you. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so, we've got our 2021 class here. That's what you expect to see. But look at this. We also have 3 future years. So all the way up to the class of 2024, you can start monitoring. So, your pandemic class might be a one to watch to see, or, dropouts, or you're getting early grads. And the future years will run all year round. So current year will still stop, right? There's a cutoff, August 27th, that'll stop, but the rest of the year, these will run all year long. And so you could periodically come in as long as you're keeping your enrollment up to date in CALPADS, and you can monitor the different 9th, 10th, and 11th graders as well as not just your current cohort. And then also on this report, we added the CTE Completer Filter, as well as this work-based learning indicator. So those are new. And then on 15.2, I'm not going to run it because this has some real kids in it, but we added some 5 new columns for about the work-based learning. But again, I'm not going to actually run that report because I don't want to show you real data. And then back to what Brandi was talking about with the SSID extract. So kind of an interesting evolution again with this. Originally this extract was meant only to, you just grabbed it whenever you had new kids enroll, right? So you want to put those SSIDs back in your SIS. Well, we did add that indicator for students with disabilities a while back. So that's nice. As kids are coming in, your LEA admin, whoever's getting your SSIDs, when they go to grab this file, they can see, oh, look at this. We have these students are some other district has flagged these as students with disabilities. I don't have an IEP, so let me chase that down, right? But now people are saying, I want to do a whole audit of my district, and see if I'm missing anybody. Well, that's not what this file was designed for. So right now you can request it by a job ID. So you upload it in an SCNR to get new SSIDs, or you can do a date range by start and end date. That date range doesn't mean what you think it means. So it only means the students that you have gotten SSIDs for from that start to end period, not their enrollment. So a change that's coming, I believe in May, sometime in May of this year, we're going to add enrollment start and end dates. So you can expand the universe of kids that are coming back in that file. The other thing that's happening is we're adding another field to that file we're going to give you the date that CALPADS recognizes the first enrollment in a US school for K-12. Some of you are probably still traumatized when we turned CIMP 60, that validation error, into a fatal warning or fatal error. I think it was back in fall 1. It didn't last long. We eventually turned it back to a warning. And that's where it's validating your first enrollment in a US school data element that you're sending up to us when we're comparing that to what's on file in CALPADS for the oldest record. And if there was a mismatch, we were kicking it back. So this change that's coming also in May of this year is going to help you address that so that you'll be able to download your whole district and CALPADS will tell you, hey, we showed this kid, enrolled back in, 2006, and you can compare it to your SIS, and your SIS says, we said 2009, so you can reconcile that. So it's a nice little change that's coming your way. I'm going to pause there for questions for anything Brandi or I went over.
So
Brandi, I did add to the chat, we did find the CERT errors. So CERT142 enforces that if you do have an annual, you have to have a service record, but I think it's the CERT140 where it's saying you got a SPED record, but there's no service because we're looking for a service record tied to an annual. And if you put it on a try, then it's orphaned. It needs to be on the annual.
CERT140?
Yeah, so CERT140 says you're missing a SPED record for a student with an SSRV, meaning they don't have the annual to align with that SSRV because anyway, it's not specifically saying you have a try and you also have an SSRV and that's a problem, but it's the CERT140 that catches that scenario. CERT142 makes sure.
Yeah, I think we need to follow up on that, Martha, because
okay.
Yeah, let's follow up on that.
Yeah.
And then we'll get it out to the SPED data coordinators somehow. Let's see.
That sure got their attention though. Huh?
Yeah, I know.
In the Q&A.
I know, I'm sorry. Let's see. What is the new CTE Completer Filter?
It's that new one I pointed out. So it's the Career Tech Ed Completer. So
On the cohort report?
On the cohort report, yeah.
Right. This is, and just so you guys know, that's really an important addition, because if you're trying to see how many of your students that are graduates in your cohort could be counted in the dashboard as CTE completers, or at least meet that measure, that's the way to verify it, right? So you need to be working with your CTE coordinators.
Somebody's asking about the SSID extract timing out, and yes, I am aware of that. I have on my to-do list just to log a bug for that. It's for the larger LEAs. Oh shoot, there was one more thing I was going to show you. We've been adding over time this supporting reports extracts, and it kind of slipped under the radar. A lot of you didn't notice, and it's more for the larger LEAs. So if you could close your eyes for a moment and imagine you are LA Unified and you're trying to run course completion at the end of the year in a report. So watch that little blue spinning wheel for for how long. So these are reports, the supporting reports, the actual lists of where you can come in and request an extract of it, and then you just come back a few minutes later and download that, rather than waiting for a report to render in the UI. And we're continuing to add onto this. The next thing that's coming for this section is supporting reports for CELPAs.
Angela, Doug Hawkins had a question. So for the first school enrollment date, and I'm assuming he's talking about the SSID extract, will that extract pull report the earliest date, or will it be the most recent date when there are multiple enrollment dates? When you're pulling the
It'll be
SSID
the
extract?
earliest K-12 date that CALPADS is aware of. Does that make sense?
To me, it does. Could you tell me one more time where to find the post-secondary survey?
And flash
203.
Put it up on the screen here.
So you go to CD's website.
Kyron
CALPADS.
sent it to me. He says it is in the user manual as well.
So either go to the CALPADS page in the communication and search for 203, or you can look it up in the user manual. Either or.
And so back to the SSID timing out, there is a workaround for that. Is just to pick, a smaller set of schools, or just do a few grade levels at a time. But we have a couple of LEAs reporting timeout issues if they try to do the whole district.
Okay, let's see here. When will we see the new SSID extract fields?
I believe they're targeted for May of this year. So next month.
Okay. And I think, let's see.
The student with disabilities is already there. It's just that you can't grab it for your whole district. It'll only show up for recently enrolled students.
Okay. Let's see. If I have a student, oh, go ahead.
There's one on the initial US start date. I get errors for students whose initial US start date is later than their start on CALPADS. When looking at CALPADS, their start date is before they were 5 years old. When I try to submit that date, it errors out because the student is too young. Will this be addressed? So I think you're supposed to align the US start date with their first day of enrollment, correct? In this particular case.
The first day of enrollment in kindergarten.
Yeah.
That's really important. It has to be the kindergarten enrollment date, because remember, initial US school enrollment date pertains to the first enrollment in a US school in kindergarten. So the error you're getting should pertain to the student's earliest enrollment date in kindergarten.
Even though they may not be 5 years old, yeah.
Yeah, and that doesn't matter. I mean, a lot of TK students, particularly because you can admit students into transitional kindergarten when they're 4 years old, that would be considered their initial US school and first US school enrollment date because they were in kindergarten, even though they were in TK.
Brandi, somebody's asking about cars. If their status didn't change, their Title I status didn't change from last year to this year, they don't have to do anything, right?
Remember that in cars, you need to, every year you're asked to re-identify and rank your schools, right? And then you explicitly have to identify schools that are in, that have school-wide Title I status. It's the school-wide authorization form. So you need to make sure and check with your CARS coordinator that they've appropriately identified any schools in school-wide status. I do not believe that status carries over from year to year because the school-wide authorization form is a required document in CARS. So just make sure you're working with your CARS coordinator to make sure that they've identified any school-wide schools, because otherwise you'll default to targeted. And that's usually when those CERT 97s start appearing. Okay. I think you can probably go on. I'll try and answer some of these.
All righty. Thanks, Brandi. Okay, we're moving on. We're getting towards the end. Oh, actually, Brandi, this is your slide. We're going to do some support updates, and Brandi's got some exciting news for us.
It's exciting. Hopefully it'll be exciting. Okay, so we wanted to give you some updates on how we plan on communicating with LEAs throughout the year. So I've been working on a new communication plan for the 2021-22 school year. And so here is what we are planning on doing for you guys in the 2021-22 school year. So first of all, we will continue to have our weekly CALPADS Q&A. It's every Wednesday from 3 to 4. It can be accessed through the CSIS support page. There is a link that you can click on every week there to get you to the weekly Q&A. So as long as you put sort of a tickler on your calendar, you can come on and ask questions. And if we have time to get to them all, we generally do. Now, the next thing that's really important is many of you know, and I have worked with many counties over the last 5 years in doing sort of these quarterly regional updates. And, you know, unfortunately, we were not able to get these regional or these quarterly updates for every single county because there are a lot of counties in the state of California. So, and I couldn't be at all of them. So we've decided to change our method of delivery for these quarterly updates. So we will be providing quarterly updates on CALPADS, and this is usually based on the submission. So it'll be the first week of the month in November, January, March, and May. And we will be providing these trainings by region. So right now the proposal is to split the state up into 4 regions. So we'll do 2 regions in the South, Southern A and Southern B. We'll do 1 in the Central Valley and 1 in Northern California. And so during the first week of the month, we will be providing those updates to those regions, and all of you will be able to access that content. So those of you based on your counties would go ahead and sign up for the quarterly updates for your particular region. So we're really excited about that because it will make all of this content, first of all, you don't have to wait for the CIM, or you don't have to wait for flashes. You will be getting this about every 3 months. Now the CIM is going to continue. It's going to be on the 3rd Tuesday of the month in October and April, but the content is more very high level, and it's sort of to communicate the strategies for the academic year. And then later in the year in April, it'll be any updates on those strategies and sort of looking forward to the next academic year. Also, we in January started a new County Office of Education user group. So we contacted all of your county offices of education. We asked them to provide an individual to participate in these user groups. We do have about 90% of the counties in the state currently participating in this user group, where we get your feedback on some proposed changes. So what we're trying to do is communicate changes out to local educational agencies earlier, so that if there's going to be an issue, we find out about it before we actually implement a change. And so your county offices are really, really engaged, and sometimes they're going to be soliciting and asking you questions, and your feedback is absolutely crucial. Providing your feedback to these county offices of education is crucial, so that you don't have to wait till the CIM to tell us that you're really upset about a particular data collection, right? So those meetings are taking place every 2 months. Beginning in January, they go all the way through the end of the year. And so far, the meetings have been relatively successful. In fact, that's one of the reasons we decided to delay the collection of parent ed level to the 22-23 academic year, was based on feedback we got from the LEAs that was given to the county offices of education. They communicated that back to us. So we really, really appreciate it. Your input is greatly appreciated. So we're hoping that you like this new regional quarterly update model. And obviously we are open to suggestions, because we want to make sure that you guys are getting regular, timely communications about CALPADS.
Thanks, Brandi. And shout out to that Q&A. I feel like I learn something every week. If you go to csis.bicmac.org, I'm on the resources page now because people keep asking for this presentation. That's right here, the CIM PowerPoint. But if you go to support, here's the lower right quadrant is the CALPADS Q&A. If you click that, it opens a Zoom meeting. So every Wednesday at 3 o'clock, you've got CSIS and CDE expertise, and very informative.
And I should also tell you that a lot of you are asking how you would sign up for the COE user group. We specifically solicited specific individuals in the county. We don't want this group to get really large and unwieldy. Right now, we've got about 70 members. And so we're trying to limit it to no more than 2 people per county, and they can solicit feedback. So don't take it personally if you're not a member of the group, right? We're just trying to keep the group manageable. If you want to find out who the individual in your county is, please feel free to submit a service ticket, and I can certainly tell you who your county representative is. Also, the other thing I will tell you is that there are a few counties who currently do not have representation. So this is a really good time to reach out to someone at the county level to say, hey, who is our rep? Or if you want to know who it is, and I can tell you whether or not you actually have a representative. And maybe your voices will say, hey, we need somebody to sit on this COE user group. So because we do want all counties represented, we want every county to have a voice. And you don't have to sign up for the quarterly regional meetings. We'll disseminate information much like we do for the CIM on when those dates have been posted and when the links are available, and you will be able to sign up and register via Zoom like you do for the CIM, except that you would sign up for your particular region.
Hey, Angela, can you show folks again where the flashes are? And in particular, can you go to Flash 181? Because Brandi, Flash 181 is where we described CERT 140 and 142, and it talks about the triennial and services. So while we still had people on the call, I wanted to also, that's where we officially said no services on a tri.
Oh, good. Okay.
Flash 181, folks. So for
all right. So sorry about that. Yes, I was wrong.
181. That's an old one, huh?
Yes.
It feels old, but it was only
less than a year ago. That was like a lifetime ago. We've survived fall one since then.
Yeah.
Thank you for getting that clarified.
I got confused. Go back and read Flash 181. That we still stand behind Flash 81. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, just some common support tips. We do request that you check the known issues if you're encountering a problem inside of CALPADS before you send in a ticket inside of CALPADS every day. Kyrene and I update this little document here, current known issues, so check that. And typically you should, as an LEA admin or the SELPA coordinator, you should be supporting your users, not us. So if they have questions, they should go through you. And if you're not able to help, then you can send in a ticket for us. Our very much preferred way to get a hold of us is through email or the web form. If you call and leave a voicemail, we don't get to it right away. And so I'd rather get to you sooner. So the best way to get a hold of us is electronically. When you do
Angela, yeah. I think you're still sharing the application. We're not seeing the slide.
How's that?
There we go. Yep, it's back. Thank you.
Yeah, and then be specific when you contact us. Just saying help is not enough. Include the job ID. It's okay to include the SSID. That's fine. There's nothing personally identifiable on that. If you've got an error number, great. If it's a staff member, include the SEED, but don't include any personally identifiable information, please. And our resources page, we've got Bridge, which is our learning management system for the LEA admins and SELPA coordinators. I showed you our YouTube channel a little bit earlier. We referred to the CALPADS help manual several times. Kyrene is doing a really good job beefing that out. So almost even yesterday, I found something that I wanted to show. If you're new, and so this is going to be your first end of year, he put together this really nice roadmap and kind of just gives you a frame of, what do I need to do start to end to get certified on time. So if you just typed in EOY roadmap in the search, I forget where I was the other day, but there was an actual link to open up the web form for submitting a ticket. So that was nice. And then we were just on the California Department of Ed site for the system documentation. That one definitely bookmark. And then the CSIS.ficmac.org also has a lot of resources, as well as the link to the Wednesday Q&A. Okay, something new this year. Nancy Baum at San Diego County Office, I think she's on. Thank you, Nancy. Started kind of collating a bunch of our suggestions, and she put it in a nice list for a checklist, and then we took it and added to it and updated it for things you need to do for the end of year submission and who should be responsible. It's got 2 tabs on it. So there's prep work that's involved, and then it breaks it down by each submission, who's responsible, when did it get done, and then we've added this checklist here. So it helps you determine who who's going to be doing the reviewing, you know, based on the content of the different reports. So that's just at a glance, help you figure that out. So that's a new resource for you this year. Okay, you guys know how to get a hold of us. If you're not on the listserv, I highly recommend it. It's a good resource. There are people that act as mentors. The CSIS web listserv, I mean, that they will help you if you reach out. You know, they've been in your shoes for a long time, and so they can give you really good direction. And before I get to the survey, Martha, are there questions that need to be answered?
There are. So show them where that EOY checklist is again. One, you can find it in the PowerPoint. There's a link to it, but we can also find it in the user manual.
So use this link. But
reform the Recei. Okay, I'm not sure if that's a question or not. There was a EOY. I mean, you could take some of these items that are on the checklist and you can add it to a Recei matrix if you want.
Yep.
You know, it's a tool and you can do with it what you will. And if you find that you've added a bunch to it and you think it would benefit your colleagues in the state, you know, send it our way and we'll try to get it out there for everybody.
Let's see. So Anita, I did see your comment about Northern California having just one may not be enough. Yeah, if need be, we can certainly add sessions. We want everybody to be able to access this content. So, and as far as them being in person, unfortunately, right now, there are no plans for these to be in person. And believe me, I miss all of you. I wish I could rack up my Southwest Rapid Rewards points and go visit you all. But right now, there are no plans for them to be in person, unfortunately.
And I would like to add that, you know, if you're, you know, not the contact for like the county office quarterly meeting, that do reach out to your county office, as Brandi mentioned, because they're, you know, trying to be in the position of helping their districts in their county. And so this is a way of building that user group locally for you guys to talk about things. And so if you're not, you know, the individual that we've designated, then you do have an opportunity to work with your county and start having user group meetings on a regular basis.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I don't see any other questions.
here it is. Okay, so it's in the user manual. It's updated now. So we were on the roadmap, and it's the second link, the EOY submission checklist. People were asking where to get that.
And you can download it.
So we had someone ask, if we don't get a response from students with disabilities on the post-secondary survey, do we leave their record blank? There's no way to get everyone to respond. And you're right, not everybody's going to respond. But guess what? You don't leave it blank because we give you an option to tell us that they didn't respond, right? So they refused to answer or did not respond. Those are values. So if they don't get back to you, just make sure you indicate that you attempted to try and get this information from them. And also I saw a few times about the post-secondary status record for students with disabilities. This is coming from your special education vendors. It's not a file that's sent up from the SIS, right? This is in SACE or in Cyrus or Welligent or WebIEP. It's in one of those systems, and the PSTS is being sent up for your students with disabilities. This is not brand new, by the way. This survey has been conducted for purposes of IDEA reporting for years and years and years and years. So your SPED coordinators, this is not new to them. Now the system to which they are submitting these data is new, right? They're submitting it to CALPADS now rather than CASEMIS, which is what they were submitting the file to in prior years. Also, there's a few people that are pointing out that the validation that they're receiving on the initial US school enrollment date, it might be triggering on students in kindergarten that were exited with no-shows, as no-shows. So is that something that we may want to consider? I would send in a service ticket because maybe we want to take a look at that. So Angela Mata, I know you sent that in, and a couple other people did as well. So if you would submit a service ticket, maybe you can look at potentially modifying it. Yeah, you know what? Kudos to Nancy Baum in San Diego County. You're a rock star, man. You have been doing some great things. Also, Rebecca Aguila has been doing some great things in Fresno County, and they've got some amazing resources, and they are always willing to share. So I'm sorry for putting your names out there, ladies, but sharing is caring, as Rebecca likes to say. And they've got some amazing resources. Nancy put together a whole portal for the districts in San Diego County, one-stop shop to find all things CalPads. So major kudos to Nancy and Rebecca for doing some really great work. Not that all of you aren't, you're not, but that checklist is Nancy's baby. So I appreciate you doing that.
Martha or Paula or Brandi, anybody has any closing remarks?
Keep up the good work. And know that our job is not to make your lives painful. we're all in this together, folks.
And I know you guys are juggling a lot of stuff. And I have to say that here we are in April and end of year is around the corner. So any kind of planning that you can do internally in your organization with others so that you have a better submission this year. It was crazy last year with COVID and all, and adjusting with the students being gone. You're likely to have a whole lot of other issues going on, closing out this school year, the testing, what's going on. So if you can start your conversations now, figuring out who's doing what, you're going to be in a really good position to be successful with your end year, and it won't cause you a lot of stress. So if start thinking about that planning and collecting that data and getting people on your team that need to be looking at this data ahead of time. And what I also noticed is nobody really asked about training for end of year. So I'm going to just throw it out there. Our live sessions will begin in May, but we have lots of recordings on the YouTube channel. And because not a whole lot is changing as in regards to data population, all of our data population recordings for end of year are a good for you right now if you're wondering, oh, what am I supposed to populate for EOY 3? So you can take a look at those recordings now and you don't have to wait for the live trainings.
So Dominic is asking if there's been any progress on SELPA access to 16.7 and 16.8, and I believe they already have access. Your SELPA should have access to the monitoring reports. You just have to make sure that they have the specific role for the user that needs to access 16.7 and 16.8. And Sue Ann, her question is, do you want to bring up the potential no discipline issue? Yeah, no, Sue Ann. Yeah, there is the possibility, although albeit relatively slim, folks, that some of you may have no discipline data to submit up, particularly if you're from a very small district. Just remember that for purposes of discipline reporting, what you are reporting is all incidents of violations of Education Code 48900 and 48915, even if they did not result in suspension, expulsion, restraint, seclusion, right? Even if it was like other corrective measures were taken. Just remember, but there is the very slight possibility that some of you will have absolutely nothing to report because you were all distance learning this year, right? So it's possible. Not always likely, but it's possible. Let's see. Reporting students with disabilities at private school. There are details about that in the FAQ. Yeah, Monique, there is a specific Q&A about transfers to and from private schools. So if you go to the, and I don't know if someone wants to navigate to the CalPads Q&A site. but you definitely can, if you just go to the CDE's website and type in CALPADS frequently asked questions, a link will pop right up. And there is information on how to report students with disabilities there. And Angela's showing you CALPADS Q&A, frequently asked questions. It's about the students with disabilities private school transfers.
It's under fall 1, right? There's a
It should
bunch
be
of SPED
yeah, it should be under fall 1, and there's a special education section. Yeah, so sometimes they're embedded. Angela just showed you a really great tip is to always, do a control find or command F, and it'll search for specific keywords. And there are lots of Q&As on, not Q&As, but FAQs on special education for fall 1 and end of year. Also, some of you were asking, some of you were actually surveyed by your counties. We did have them solicit some questions from all of you. And one of the questions was, how would you feel if the data in fall 2 were collected earlier than fall 1, right? That was one of the questions. Please, nobody freak out. We're asking the question because it's important for us to assess what sort of impact it would have on your LEAs if the staff demographic and course files were required earlier. And the reason we're asking is because your credential analysts have said, hey, we don't even have access to see the master schedules and staff assignments until January. And by that time, there's no way for us to correct any sort of misassignments. So we're just sort of asking the question, what would it look like? How would it be feasible for your districts? Now, one of the things you should know also is that we talked to your student information system vendors just last week about this very same issue. And what they agreed to explore were ways that they could show you reports of staff assignments and specific data, very, very similar to what is given to you guys in report 4.3, staff teaching assignment detail, to be able to produce a report for your credential analysts really early in the year so that they can see what's in your student information system at any given point in time. So we agreed to provide your vendors a list of the data elements that credential analysts would need to see with respect to the staff. Additionally, if your student information system has a mechanism to store the credentials for a particular staff member, some of them have talked about also providing you that information so that you can give it to your credential analyst. So we are exploring all options. So it doesn't mean we're moving the fall 2 data earlier. It just means we're asking the question to see what sort of impact it might have.
So, I would add, there's some questions here, like post the link for the Recei spreadsheet. If you go into the CALPADS user manual, and you can get there by just having that link, or when you're logged into CALPADS, you can find it under the help. And use that user manual and use the search, and you're going to be amazed at the kind of help you're going to find with that search. So if we didn't get your question answered here in the CIM, utilize that user manual. There's a lot of stuff in there. And the YouTube channel, search on there for recordings. We also record the Wednesday Q&A and publish them on the YouTube channel, but they expire after 2 weeks, so it's short-lived.
Someone's asking, is there a report to know students whose last enrollment was exited with E155 but didn't re-enroll in your LEA?
Yes.
The ERD.
Online maintenance, anomaly management, manage exit reason discrepancies. You'll find those kids there.
Okay, so does the 2021 calendar get updated to add any new items within end of year like ASVAB? I did try and respond to a lot of the people that were asking this, but ASVAB, those scores are not going to be collected via CALPADS. I don't know whether or not it would be appropriate to add it to the CALPADS calendar because it sort of is an adjunct data collection that's being done for the Accountability Office. If at some point it does become part of the annual CALPADS submission, then we'll add it to the CALPADS calendar. But again, the ASVAB results will be collected external to CALPADS. It's not being collected through CALPADS. So Jan says, would it help if district superintendents ask CTC to provide the crosswalk between credentials and CALPAD state course codes? It might, Jan. Then we've got what also factors into the credential and appropriate placement is the selected state course code correct. If so, is that code set updated yearly from CDE? Yes, we do update the state course codes based on things that we find out in the prior year. Those state course codes, those additions generally get made in July, and they're disseminated to your student information system vendors to update in the student information systems. So, but yes, it does make a difference. In fact, the state course code is probably the most important component of Fall 2 because that's how a lot of exceptions are generated in CalSAS.
I'm not following Chris Hollins's statement.
It was regarding Brandi's
moving Fall 2.
moving, yeah.
Or just making Fall 2. You know, the other thing that we're exploring also is remember that you can submit those files at any time, right? You could start submitting them in July and August if you wanted to. But right now, we do not have any snapshots for Fall 2 that start running before January. And so you can submit data to this system, you can resolve, you know, input validation errors, but you don't actually start seeing any of those reports until January. So another suggestion that we've currently got on the table is to make an ODS version of report 4.3, which would allow you to upload those files early, see the data in report form, provide it to your credential analysts early. But again, that's one of the reasons if we're not able to do that in a timely fashion or by fall, it would be really nice for your student information system vendors to be able to give you reports that you could run at any time during the year. And you wouldn't have to wait till it's uploaded to CalPADS. Can I continue to work through end of year if we don't have any school-wide Title I schools to identify in CARS? Yeah, I don't see why not, right? Get the files submitted, get work through your input validation errors until your CERT errors start running in May. But a lot of you were asking questions about how, you know, for PEBT, about the identification of students that are in person and hybrid. How are they going to be collecting that information?
Well, that's still being determined, but
Okay.
I think most of you all know that there's currently a collection that is run by the California Department of Public Health that your schools and districts have been already filling out. That's related to some of the, it came with the COVID relief package, I think. So someone at your LEA school have already been filling it out for, they filled it out for March and they've done it for April. So the hope is to utilize that tool, but that has not yet been decided.
And so one of the other questions that came up related to that is it going to be determined like at a certain point in time, what format, instructional format the site is using, or?
It'll be something like the majority of students during the month.
Got it. And that'll be every month collected like that?
Yeah, again, it's kind of right now in negotiations. Obviously, we understand completely the difficulty in going back and doing this retroactively, but it's, you know, it might be required in order to get, you know, about $4 billion out of food benefits to families. So basically we'll keep you informed, but we're trying to make it as simple as possible with lots of assumptions, but it has to get okayed by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So yeah, that's where we're at. We'll keep you informed. But the benefits aren't retroactive. They're retroactive till the start of the 2021 school year. However, eligibility, if you're eligible in 1920 and for some reason we're not eligible in 2021, then you will be eligible for 2021. Basically, they believe that because kids were mostly virtual during the fall time, schools may not have been able to collect a lot of the applications. And so they're trying to make it as kind of easy as possible for folks to get become eligible. So they're just looking at 1920. So for us in California, because of LCFF, we may not have as much of that problem, but nevertheless, we'll look in CALPADS for eligibility purposes. We'll look to see if a kid had eligibility in 1920 as well as 2021.
And with that, have a great week, everybody.
Yeah, thank you for joining us and your input. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Brandi. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you, Sasha.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Nice to see everyone.